Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys having me today. As it was said, my name is Ben Theis, owner and director of Skol Marketing. I used to work at Google, and so we've been around now for 15 years with Skol Marketing, so I like to kind of say we do all the kind of Google stuff. But my favorite part is honestly connecting with great business owners and business leaders in the community and being able to kind of, teach or just kind of educate on some of the new topics that are always surrounding my industry. So appreciate Josh and AGC for having me here today. So today what we're going to be talking about is the impact of AI to SEO, kind of the future of searches now. So really, how AI is actually impacting search engine optimization, again, more the classic term that we've kind of been used to or we've been dealing with for the past 20 years kind of with Google. So the first thing that I want to, again, kind of introduce to somebody, and I talked to a couple of people here, and I love that we actually already, some people know this term, but the new term is essentially generative engine optimization, or GEO. Now, again, there are a ton of terminologies out there right now. There's AIO, AEO, LLM, EO. It just sounds like EIEIO. It's the song almost. It goes on and on. Again, honestly, and they really essentially kind of all mean the same thing. What we're essentially talking about here is AI optimization, understanding how, and there are different ways that these AI bots are looking at content, are looking at web presences, are looking at different aspects differently than kind of how a search engine, if you will, kind of analyze stuff. But this is what I like to kind of visualize and have this kind of created to kind of show us is that really, we like to kind of tell people is yes, we can talk about SEO, we can talk about GEO and use any of the other terminologies, but really what we're talking about is search optimization. Very similar if we talk about marketing. There might be digital marketing, offline marketing, again, branding marketing, but it's still marketing. And that's what we're kind of talking about here. And so looking at, again, the SEO and it has a very specific type of, again, tactics, techniques, and things that we're looking at. GEO, the same thing, but we all come into the middle and we're all still dealing with that kind of search optimization, if you will. So that's one of the biggest things that we're kind of seeing obviously change when it comes to search optimization. So the first thing I also like to kind of talk about is the Google's helpful content update. So I'm sure we've all used this, obviously. So this is the, again, this is the AI overview section that has essentially been out since, again, about 2.5 years now when Google really kind of put this out. This was Google's first, I like to kind of point out, it wasn't their first actual, utilization of AI from a search aspect. We've all been using AI there, but if you guys have ever seen here, people also ask, those questions have been around for years. That was actually Google's, again, first attempt at AI predictive of you search for this, people have also searched for this, that's kind of what we're looking for. Now what we're seeing though is we have this obviously this AI overview, which is like the first step into GEO, or ultimately, this is honestly, when we start talking about GEO, this is the most valuable space that you can look to optimize for right now. I'll get into some other statistics, but a new stat just came out that says under 5% of searches that are being done on AI are actually someone looking for a product or service. So what that tells us is, of course, people are looking at it as an educational tool. Doesn't mean we can't use it to our advantage, but the point being, though, is 95% of those searches are still going to Google. So when we look at the valuable spot, like this spot on Google, on Gemini, using Gemini is the most valuable spot for GEO right now that we're seeing, and that's why, because it's being utilized for that at such an alarming rate. Now, again, that number will definitely explode here over the next, again, months into years. Again, under 5% is a very small number, but it is just important to realize how users are predominantly using that right now, but how us as business owners, website owners, managers, marketing managers, whatever you're doing, can set yourself up for this whole new frontier, if you will. So a couple other things too is obviously, again, we have Google's full AI mode, that was integrated. Believe it or not, it's kind of crazy that this did not come out, essentially Google's direct competition to ChatGPT on Google search until April of 2025. So we're still under, again, a year old, again, with this, and this will essentially kind of be the future, so to speak, of it's just that interactive. Obviously, just by raising hands, who's actually used this on Google search? about half of us. Okay, cool. This is taking the overview and then showing more, and then you can actually, again, go back and forth and search with Google. If you guys haven't done it yet, obviously highly recommend it. If you're using the Gemini app separately, it's exactly this feature. This is just on Google search. The reason I bring it up in this context, because again, as we're talking about traditional SEO, people are traditionally going to google.com to do these searches, and even with those statistics kind of showing us, still single digits of people are really, again, seeking out Gemini or the ChatGPT app or Grok or any of these other kind of AI engine apps and actually looking for products or services. It's more of a learning module at this point, in time. So here's a couple things. Now, again, I know we're talking about this topic, which is a very big new kind of topic within about, again, kind of 15 minutes. And I know I want to open it up for some questions, but I do just at least want to share kind of a few things with you. If you're saying, well, Ben, how do I, again, at the very least, start to get, again, my mindset and my strategy to start to look to what do I need to do to rank for this section, or how do I start to align myself for quote unquote GEO? And there's a few things here. Is the one big, I'd say buzzword is answers. FAQ content is so FAQ content and testimonials are, studies have shown are the two biggest things that AI is learning on. And so if you want to help yourself, really leaning into that type of FAQ content and testimonials on your website and having different pages, of course, different content. And you can, of course, design that whatever works for your brand, but the actual content piece of that, of having that within there. There is something called structured data or schema markup. There's some more kind of information that I can share about that, but it's even a way that it's kind of coded or the way that it's kind of structured. This might be something that you work with your web developer or whatever, but this is also just another way that it's a little bit easier for these AI engines to actually scrape, crawl, and understand your site so that obviously they can use your answers to answer questions that people are obviously asking from that. And then this one's sometimes a little bit easier said than done, and I'll show you kind of what this means. But really almost summarizing your entire page or complex ideas to a couple sentences at the top. It's a really, really good strategy. So taking the entire page that you are and right at the top, condensing all of that into a couple sentences. Not only does that work really good for user experience now, studies have shown, of course, like people want to read less and less. It's kind of interesting because we're at this dynamic where studies show that people would rather watch a video than actually read content, but still search and AI would still rather read content than obviously, again, try to assume something in a video. So we kind of have this dynamic, and that's one important thing to remember is every time that you're developing content for your web presence, for your website, whatever it may be, you're always building it for two entities. One is the search algorithm, and the other one is the person. And so understanding a little bit, of course, of how that kind of flows, what they prefer, can set yourself up for success. So this is a very basic way that I like to try to give people that you can kind of, again, outline, a landing page or, some of the easiest ways that you can start going home right now and optimizing for, GEO would be if you have an FAQ section, take those FAQs and essentially build them out like blogs and really just do something simple like this. Ask the question at the top, then do the summarize. This is the most important thing right here, is summarize it there and then get into the actual content of, again, whatever that question is, or, in the meaty content, if you will. Now, I do get some questions that people ask and say, well, Ben, does it have to say the summary of the answer? No, you can say whatever you again, kind of want. This was just kind of an example of that. And so you can turn that into kind of a branded kind of section or whatnot. But doing this formula, again, right here is something you can really start right now and just taking the content you already have. That's what I always try to tell people to do is take the content you already have and try to repurpose it or expand upon it. Of course, you can start, again, creating new content. You eventually should, but it's the easiest and best ROI, return on investment for your time, energy, and budget that you're going to have. Utilizing that and expanding on it. Then you can even get fancy. You can take each one of these and make them into videos, and we can get, all there, but you're still just repurposing that content. But this structure will really do you well and to kind of do that. Now, another thing I like to tell people is not every single one of these needs to be linked on your menu. So if you're concerned about being able to, again, have too much or whatever, it's okay, these can be unlisted. You could link from your normal FAQ page or whatnot. It's just making sure you get this content on your actual website so that these AI engines can start to read it and you can start to get that traffic and get that understanding from them. So another kind of thing too, as we're kind of just going through this, is a couple things to take away is kind of the new search habits. And I'm sure a lot of us are probably actually in this kind of category when we look at this, but just AI has, actually changed some of these. So we obviously have more conversational queries. Obviously that thanks to ChatGPT, that back and forth. If you really look at it historically, that's the biggest change in Google's history since their inception, if you really think about it, because Google was always, I put out an answer, I have to sift through the results. If I don't like it, I have to go back from the beginning. Now we can build on that and kind of do that. That's the most revolutionizing thing that we're doing right now and that we're seeing. So increased use of voice search, obviously, so it means we're getting more detail. Anytime we use voice, we're getting longer search queries, everything like that. More question-based content like I talked about with that, and then using more AI engines to search instead of Google. But again, going back to, we're seeing that increase, but we're still less than 5% of people actually utilizing an AI engine to just directly search for an actual product or service. It's still a lot more educational base type of searches. And so here, and I know it's a bunch of numbers, but I like to kind of throw these out to you to kind of validate this, and you guys can kind of look at some of this kind of later. But what I would say is the top one is probably my favorite stat, that Google's impressions are up 49% year over year, but clicks to your website are actually down 30%. Again, that's telling us that people are learning more and more from that front page without ever having to leave. Their answers are being, their questions are being answered. They're finding out the contact information or whatever it may be. So this is also important to realize that if you're working on your marketing and you're seeing that your clicks to your website from Google are down, yeah, that may suck, but like there's actually something to it. Doesn't mean maybe you're doing something wrong. You might actually be doing it right because of GEO and some of the tracking technologies that are coming out that you can now you should really start to look at them separately. Like we have reports with our clients for AI visibility as well as classic SEO kind of ranking and search. So, and then I'll just kind of skip down here to this one too. This is another huge one. This also is great for small business owners or people that are starting companies or starting to lean into SEO and GEO, is that 89% of citations, so essentially what AI is pulling from, comes from beyond the first page. So, again, yes, ranking still counts when we're talking about classic, but ranking doesn't matter in, again, GEO. It matters about the quality of the content. So that's kind of great, because if we're going up against someone that's had $20,000 a month for, again, 15 years, that gets really hard in the old SEO game to really kind of compete against. Here with, again, with GEO, it can really, again, allow and kind of level that playing field where it's quality over quantity. And so that's ultimately, again, kind of a huge one. And then I always like to kind of say this is like 0-click searches. So again, kind of goes back up to this, now account for over 50% of Google searches. So again, 50% of the time someone's doing a search on Google, they're not clicking on anything. So that's ultimately realizing how this is changing those search behaviors and doing that, and ultimately how we can align, again, your strategies to, again, kind of comply with that. And really, again, if anything, set yourself up for that, for success, for as this just becomes the more and more norm, as it becomes, not just early adopters doing it this way when everybody's kind of doing it this way.
That was really,